Hi, third graders. I'm gonna see if there we go. Okay, great. Welcome to our next writing lesson. In our last lesson, you got your animal report notes ready to write about. You added on a little bit to your notes so that you can really teach people as much as possible about your animal. Today, I'm going to teach you how to take those notes and turn them into some of the chapters for your animal report. So there are a lot of steps involved in this. I'm going to go through them, and I've got all my charts back here. I'll also post these charts in the animal reports folder so you can look at them as you're writing up your notes. And you can always rewatch the video if you forget one of the steps and you need to be reminded. And of course, you can always send an email to your teacher to ask them questions also. Okay, so you've taken all these great notes. I'm going to get my notes out too. But we can't just type up or write out a bunch of notes and expect people to read those notes and understand what we're talking about. So what we need to do now is take all these notes and really think about how to organize the notes so that they'll make sense, and then write about them in a way that will be interesting and easy to understand for our reader. So there are a couple of steps that we're going to take here. And I've got this writing notes into chapters chart back here to help us with the different steps. The first step is to decide the order that our notes will go. So I'm going to take one page at a time. Each of these pages of notes will be a different chapter. I think I'm going to start with what does my animal eat? And then what I'm going to do is read through each of the notes and decide what order does it make sense to put these notes in my chapter. So I'm going to make sure I've got a marker, a pen handy. I'm going to read through them all once, and then I'll go back and decide, like, well, I think this should be the first sentence, and then I should have this one, and then I should have this one. Okay, so I have, what does my animal eat? Blubber and skin of seals. Eats about 1 seal each week. Polar bears find breathing holes of seals. Stick head in hole and wait for seal. When seal comes back, polar bear attacks. Okay, those are the notes that I have for what my animal eats. So I'm trying to think, like, which of those notes makes sense to write about first, to have as the first piece of information that people read about what my animal eats. I think the fact that they eat about 1 seal each week, I think that makes sense as a first sentence. So I'm going to write a little one next to that note. And then I think next I want to talk about how the polar bears find the seals. So I'm going to write a 2, 3, 4 to show that that's the order that I want to write about those notes. And then last, I'll talk about the part of the seal that the polar bear eats, that it eats the blubber and the skin of seals. So that's going to be my 5th sentence. Okay, so I ordered my notes. Notice that they're not just in the order that I wrote them down. Like, I actually start with this one down here, and my first set of notes is going to be the last sentence. Okay, so I've got my order to my notes. Now I want to start writing these notes up in an interesting way that will also make sense to my reader. So when we're trying to write things in an interesting way that makes sense to our reader, it's really important to use transition words and phrases. Transition words and phrases, they're like the glue that sticks sentences together. So here are some transition words and phrases that I wrote down that I thought would be helpful for your reports. I'm going to turn this a little so you can see them all. Additionally, besides, furthermore, secondly, lastly, also, finally, moreover, interestingly, and I think it's neat that. So those are some of the phrases and words that I'll try to use to glue my notes together into sentences. But before I do that, I actually want to write a topic sentence for my chapter. That's like a sentence that introduces what this chapter will be talking about. So I'm going to go ahead and type my notes here so that you can actually see what I'm writing. If you're handwriting your notes, that's totally fine. It's just easiest for me to show you on the computer using Microsoft Word. Okay, so I'm going to start by writing what the chapter was about, which was what does, well, I said my animal, but I wrote about polar bears, so I'm going to change that a little bit. What do polar bears eat? Okay, that's the chapter title. Now I need to write some kind of a topic sentence that grabs my reader's attention. So this is all about food. I'm thinking about how people don't usually hunt their food. We just go to the grocery store or order food. Polar bears actually have to like hide out and wait for their food. So I wonder if I can turn that into an interesting topic sentence. Like, it's easy for people to get food by just going to a store or ordering food to be delivered. It's not so easy for polar bears. Okay, so I actually wrote two sentences, two topic sentences to grab my reader's attention and get them interested in what I'm about to talk about. I'm going to reread it. It's easy for people to get food by just going to a store or ordering food to be delivered. It's not so easy for polar bears. So now I want to go back to my notes. The first note I want to write about is that polar bears eat about one seal each week. So looking at my transition words and phrases here, I think I'm going to use the word interestingly. Interestingly, polar bears eat about one seal each week. Now I'm going to kind of hook back to the topic sentence a little bit, and they don't get it by going to the grocery store. Okay, so my second note was about how they get their food. They find the breathing holes of seals. So I'm going to say polar bears hunt food by finding the breathing holes of seals. Okay, my next note says, stick head in hole and wait for seal. Well, I can't just type stick head in hole and wait for seal. That's not a complete sentence, and it wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense to the reader. So I'm going to look through my transition words and find some glue that'll glue this next sentence to the one I just wrote. Additionally, they stick head in hole. No, that doesn't really make sense. Besides, that doesn't make sense. Furthermore, no. Secondly, maybe I could change that into second. So polar bears hunt food by finding the breathing holes of seals. Second, no, that doesn't really work. I'm going to use one that's not up here and I'll add it to this list. I'm just going to use the word then. Okay, so I'm going to write then and look back at my note. They stick their head in the hole and wait for the seal. Okay, my next note says, when seal comes back, polar bear attacks. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to my transition words again. There was one that I was thinking, finally. I'm going to use the word finally. Okay. Then they stick their head in the hole and wait for the seal. Finally, now I'm going to go look at my note to see what to write. When the seal comes back, the polar bear attacks. Okay. Not done yet, though. I still have two notes that I want to write about. Just one note that I want to write about. I want to write about how the polar bear only eats the blubber and the skin of seals. So let me try to find a transition word that will work for that. I could use additionally. I could use furthermore. I could use interestingly, but I already used that one. I could use, I think it's neat that. I don't know if I think that's so neat though. So I think I'll just use additionally. Additionally, polar bears eat the blubber and skin of seals. Okay, so I finished writing up all my notes. I wrote about each one and I used transition words and phrases to glue those sentences together to make them interesting and easy to understand for my reader. I'm going to put in one final sentence just to kind of close out the paragraph. I'm going to start by rereading it though. What do polar bears eat? It's easy for people to get food by just going to a store or ordering food to be delivered. It's not so easy for polar bears. Interestingly, polar bears eat about one seal each week, and they don't get it by going to the grocery store. Polar bears hunt food by finding the breathing holes of seals. Then they stick their head in the hole and wait for the seal. Finally, when the seal comes back, the polar bear attacks. Additionally, polar bears eat the blubber and skin of seals. I'm just going to end it with something like, now you know how polar bears get their food. Okay, so just to go back over the steps again, I started by figuring out what order I would put my notes in for one of the chapters, for one of the subtopics. Then I wrote a topic sentence for that chapter. I figured out some kind of sentence or two that would grab my reader's attention and kind of introduce the subtopic that I was going to teach them. Then I wrote my notes into sentences using transition words and phrases. So I kept looking at this chart to think about what transition words would help the sentences go together nicely. Okay, so those are the steps I would like you to follow. This information will be in the animal reports folder. It's going to be called Writing Notes into Chapters. And there will also be a transition words and phrases document available for you to look at so that you can write your notes up into chapters. I think it would be a good idea to try to write at least one subtopic into a chapter each day for your writing. So if you have 3 or 4 subtopics, that means it could take you between 3 and 4 days to turn these into chapters. So let's say, so that's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then Monday. So let's say we'd love to have your chapters written and sent to your teacher by Tuesday. And then we'll teach you the next step of writing reports, which will be writing an introduction and a conclusion. And then we get to do fun stuff like add diagrams and pictures and stuff like that. Okay, so write those notes into chapters. Can't wait to see what you write. Email me if you have any questions and have fun.